Hey everyone, so this is another post-chemo update, and I just finished my first semester of my part-time degree, and I'm really happy that I finished my first semester. There's been lots of ups and downs, and as I mentioned in another video, I find my anxiety more relentless and unpredictable, and so it's been hard to ride that wave. And it was particularly hard once the semester ended because there were some subjects, there were some assessments where I didn't do as well as I thought I'd had, or I felt like I was going to do a lot worse, and turns out my marks were actually okay. I think that a lot of my anxiety is around the marks and assessments because that's something that I can control, and it's something that I've always been pretty good at, and yet I find myself really anxious about it now, and a lot more than I used to be before cancer. So that's been really frustrating, especially since I've noticed myself tying my self-worth to the marks, and that's not true. Like, that isn't a valid way to measure your own worth. That's super unhealthy, right? To look at marks and measure yourself up depending on how good you did in that assignment. It's messed up, and I'm trying to work on it. But I think as well, what I've realized is that sometimes I will look back at an assignment that I did well at in this semester when I'm feeling down for whatever reason, because it reminds me that I'm still good at that particular type of assessment, and I might be stumbling in other ways in my degree, but that's because I am less experienced in that, and no one is 100% great at it the first time that they do it. And so that has also been helpful to be able to draw strength from the assignments that I do well at, but at the same time, it's hard not to get caught up in that. And so that's been really, really hard. And I just find my anxiety to be a bigger problem when it comes to study. I feel like it just occupies so much more space in my mind. I feel like I have to take extra hours in the day to, calm my mind down, things like that. So I feel like I'm slower at the progress that I wanted to do this year in a variety of areas, because the anxiety that I get around studying and trying all these new and different things can really hold me back. But, the more that you do it and the more that you keep pushing, despite how hard it is, you will get better at it, and it'll become easier over time, and the anxiety won't be as bad. So I think it has improved a bit over time, but it's still been a bit of a battle. I know that I have some mild chemo brain side effects, that they still affect me now, and I know that they're very mild compared to a lot of people, but they still affect my concentration. I know that multitasking isn't like a real psychological phenomenon. Really, we're just like alternating between tasks, and we're able to do that quickly, so it looks like we're multitasking, but in reality we can only handle doing one task at a time. But I notice that when I multitask now after cancer, I will make so many more mistakes. I really struggle to multiclass, or even like listen to a video or a podcast while writing to someone. I will make all these spelling mistakes and grammatical mistakes and just screw up. And that's not a big deal. That's not something that will, really cripple someone, but it does eat away at me because I know that it's something that's different. And I used to pride myself in the fact that I could multitask. Not that that's something to be particularly proud of, but it was something that I kind of saw as part of my identity, being able to be really fast at things, being able to multitask at things, stuff like that. And academia, like, school, assignments, exams, things like that, I've always been good at. They came naturally to me. And so struggling a bit in my degree now has been a bit hard, I think, for my anxiety in that way. I think I find it hard to separate what I'm experiencing as a chemo brain thing, and I should, be patient with myself, versus something that I can actually work on and I should continue to work on, versus maybe I had a kind of or maybe I had the wrong idea about myself. Like, maybe I actually wasn't as savvy at multitasking like I used to be. Maybe I thought that I was really good at remembering things, but maybe I never was good at remembering things. Maybe I thought I was good at exams and that kind of work that you have to do cognitively. And maybe I'm not good at that. Maybe I thought I was good at all these things, but I'm actually not good. And I think when I'm in my lowest point, I will think, maybe I'm not that smart. Maybe all these things that people told me, or all this validation that I would get through schooling, maybe that was wrong, or maybe not wrong, but maybe everyone else was getting the exact same marks. Maybe I just thought that I was smarter and more capable than other people, and in reality I never was that much smarter or capable than anyone else. And that's not a bad thing. Like, being smart is not the only great thing to have in life. It's not the only value. It's something that I value, is smarts, but it's not the only value, and it's not the only value that I've ever had of myself. I know that I have many awesome qualities, but being smart is something that I heard a lot growing up, and it's something that I just quickly tied to my identity because it's something that just came up so often. And so, you know, it doesn't mean that I'm a genius or anything, but I was smart. I seemed to learn things quickly. I was able to balance a lot of things like that. And while it's not like I've totally lost that capacity, I just feel like that side of me, that part of my identity, has taken a beating from, you know, cancer and chemotherapy. And even the side effects themselves, like, yeah, I'm so grateful that they're mild, but at the same time, they're mild enough and they affect me in ways, especially the brain ones, the ones that affect your mind, they affect me in a way that starts to make me doubt myself and who I am and my identity. I know we can't like hold on to these like very narrow, you know, things or images and tie them to identity and expect them to never change over time. But I don't know, I always thought that, you know, those kinds of things that are in the mind, like smarts, isn't something that normally changes over time. But of course it can. And of course it can if you experience like traumatic brain injury, if you go through things like chemotherapy, it can affect things in the mind. And yeah, that's just something that I've been struggling with, figuring out what I'm experiencing in the moment, whether or not it's just who I am, whether it's something that I can work on and I should keep working on, or if it's just something that, you know, chemo gave me. And I think that's also contributing to my anxiety, because I think there are moments when I kind of go through a bit of an identity crisis, like, who am I if I'm not these things that I thought I was so good at, and now that I'm back at university, I'm struggling in a variety of ways. Like, this was kind of my area. Like, I was always so good in this space. I always felt so comfortable in this space, and now I don't. I'm just coming out of the most recent slump that I was in, but when I was in it, I knew that I was like hitting the bottom of that slump, because I started to get really teary and I felt like I was about to break down and cry in the middle of events, like in the middle of hanging out with someone or with family and everyone's happy, but then a thought would just run through my mind. It would just race through, and sometimes I wouldn't even like be aware of what thought it was, but I could just feel these tears coming to my eyes. And in this most recent slump, I was thinking a lot about those kind of waves of sadness and trying to really pinpoint the thoughts that have been racing through my mind. And I noticed that I would have these kind of emotional reactions when I would start to think about myself when I was younger, especially, you know, around 22 years old and younger, just before I'd had cancer. And, you know, not that many years have passed. I'm 25, like I'm going to turn 26 in a few months. So it's only like 3 years ago since, you know, my life was hit by cancer. And yet in a way it does feel so far away. And when I think about, yeah, my 22-year-old self, my 20-year-old self, my 18-year-old self, I just get really sad. And I don't know if it's just the cliche of like, oh, my innocence, like I lost it when I went through this whole cancer experience, oh, poor me, or if it's just because when I see images of myself or when I think back to those times, I think of, you know, wanting to warn her and letting her know like she's going to go through all this like pain and hardship, and that really sucks, and I want to warn her. Not that it would really make a difference. I don't know what warning someone would do, like just crap happens, shit happens in life, like you just have to learn to get through it. I don't know if it's that I look back at myself at that age and how I was just so ambitious and I had so many ideas and so many dreams and all these things, and they weren't held back at all. They weren't inhibited, and I don't feel like I've changed in that way. Like I still feel like I have this driving force that I want to do things, like I want to create things, and I've always known that I can create my life, and I am the person who has the ability to change and to make and to break my own life. It's all within me, and I just have to go out and start doing things and work hard towards whatever goals that I have. And so I still have that, and it's not like I've become really cynical or cold or anything like that, but I don't know, maybe it's just that I have those dreams, but I have a harder path to walk. And when I've thought about it, the only kind of answer that seems most right, although maybe the reason why I get teary when I think back to my younger self is a combination of all those things, but I think the one that's probably the most true at the moment is that, yeah, I had all these dreams and all these goals and all these things that I was going to do, but just life is harder now. And my 20s, when I was younger, especially when I was a teenager, I just wanted to become independent. I just was so fiercely independent. It was something that was just bursting from within me, that even though I had an amazing family and great parents and a lot of awesome stuff, all I wanted was to just be on my own, you know, earning my own money, creating my own path. Like, I was just so excited to do that, you know, I wasn't able to do that when I just finished university, because I got sick with cancer and everything got delayed, and then I eventually was able to move out, and I did, and that's all great. But I still have to create this own path of mine in my 20s, in this time period that everyone is often like glorifying and romanticizing as the best years of your life, that you can do so many things and look so good, blah, blah, blah. And yet I am trying to build myself, and I am creating my own path, and I'm doing those things, maybe a bit slower than I wanted to, and maybe it's been harder than I really planned for it to be. But I am still doing it. But I think I just get sad because I had pictured this time to be so fun and to be a time when I had very little hardship. And instead, it's a complicated decade. It's going to be a really complicated decade for me. And I think for a lot of people, you know, every decade is complicated for a different reason, but maybe it's just the media. Maybe we just get sent this message that the 20s are, you know, kind of like perfect and there's no issues with it. And it's not like I didn't think that I wouldn't have problems in my 20s. It's just I didn't think cancer was going to be my problem. I didn't think facing my own death and the idea of like leaving loved ones and having to go through so much pain and having to come out of it with certain, like, you know, mild problems and side effects and all that. I just didn't think that was going to be my story, I guess. I didn't think that was going to be on my path. And, you know, most illnesses are not on anyone's path. No one plans for that. It just happens to people. And sudden deaths to family members just happen to people. And I have to let go this idea that my 20s was ever going to be like perfect and great and just a time of growth, because they are still a time of growth. They're just harder. And I think for nearly everyone has some kind of issue or problem, you know, that they face at every decade of their life. And I don't know, I'm rambling now, but I don't know, I've just been thinking a lot about why I get so teary and so emotional. And yeah, I think that's probably the reason that I can really pinpoint. And probably the only other thing is that, yeah, sure, I think I did cope pretty well with everything that I was going through. You know, when I think back to myself at that age, I realize how fucked up it was to be told when you're 22 you have cancer and that you need to go through months of chemotherapy. That's really messed up, and I didn't really think or process it as a messed up thing to the full extent of what it was at the time. I'm just really good at blocking things out, and not in a super unhealthy way. Like, I think it's just me going into survival mode. I'm able to shut down a lot of emotions and just focus on getting through things. But I've just noticed that now maybe those emotional reactions are, you know, that part of myself that still needs to grieve and still needs to cry and is still sad and never got a chance to really like come out because I was in survival mode when I was in chemo, and I just didn't want to be breaking down near family members because I just didn't want to put that on them, which I know is messed up, but it is what it is. It's how I saw it. And I think maybe that's also why I get really emotional, because I think I'm realizing how heavy of a thing it was to go through. And I don't think I ever gave myself that space to really sit with that and process that. And so I think that's probably also why I get teary when I think about myself at that age. I just wish life didn't have to be so hard sometimes. And this isn't a thought that I normally have. I'm normally like, oh, life's hard, but everyone has, you know, a hard life for different reasons. And, you know, you keep pushing through and you make the most of it. And I agree with those things and I agree with those voices, but I don't know. I'm still coming out of a slump, and I think that's probably been a thought that has been more prominent, that I wish life didn't have to be so hard. But wishing doesn't get you where you want to go or where you want to be, so. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Please leave your comments down below and I'll see you in the next video. Okay.